This is Stacy McKibben with the Master Communicator podcast, where CEOs, senior leaders, and C-suite executives share their advice. It's 6 questions in 9 minutes because the best leaders know how to share their ideas concisely and quickly. Let's jump right in. Question number 1. In a few sentences, tell me who you are and what you do.
Hi, my name is Mark Wilkinson. I'm the Senior Vice President of Products for a company called ibex.digital. We're part of a company called ibex Connect. And my job is to take award-winning and thoroughly fantastic solutions that we've designed and delivered to big clients and big brands all over the world and find new markets for them. So I get a chance to play in a lot of new vertical spaces and bring helpful solutions to new companies.
That's amazing. And I think you were sharing with me, Mark, that you have like 15,000 people worldwide. Is that right? And you had to make a huge shift here recently, getting them all into remote environments?
Yeah, we do. We're a global company. We operate in about 26 countries, and we had an early view of COVID, and we saw it emerge around the globe. So we've got people in every time zone around the globe, and we had to move almost 15,000 of our distributed workforce into work at home scenarios. So we had to quickly assess the scenarios and make sure that we were able to, figure out logistics and planning and get people out of the offices and centers into some interesting facilities. We took over whole hotels in some of the markets so that we could get our folks and their families into safety and continue to, keep them employed and keep working for the companies that we do business with.
Wow, talk about servant leadership, talk about communication. I'll be really excited to hear your thoughts. It leads me perfectly actually into my next question, which is from your perspective, especially kind of thinking through kind of the chaos of all the recent times, what's the best thing about leading people from your perspective?
I'm a bit of an introvert, so leading people didn't come naturally to me. I lucked out by having some good examples early in my career. And you mentioned servant leadership. I think that's really at the core of what we do today. And my philosophy is just being able to get teams aligned, working together on goals that are bigger than ourselves. I think it's a great way to keep people motivated and enthused. And my job is really just to cultivate that through, really being of service.
I love when my self-proclaimed introverts are on here and talk about, kind of leading, because again, I think their leadership comes in all shapes and sizes, right? There's no right or wrong. I think if you have a passion for it, then you need to be in that leadership spot.
Yeah, exactly right.
So I often hear from other leaders, business would be great if it weren't for that pesky people part. I'm curious, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's a funny question. I am the worst consumer in the world. So most of my career has been B2B or B2B2C. And what I've tried to do is always keep teams filled with people who have a consumer and client focus, as well as a business focus. And that way our clients who we advise and support to get better connected with their own consumers have a balance, and we can make sure that our clients are being supported. But yeah, I think, keeping the customer at the center of the business sounds very cliche, but so few companies do it well that it's just integral to the way we think. At heart, we're a CLX or life cycle company for big brands to work with their customers, and that's really where we geek out.
Well, and it's funny as, again, I'm pulling that introvert thread through listening to you talking about almost like surrounding yourself by people who love the people part, right? So you're even kind of like, I'm hearing just, again, acknowledging that sometimes it's challenging. So make sure that you're finding those people that, really can love on the customers and the people through that lens, and to really provide that energy in that space.
Absolutely. If you can find, if you know where you're weak and strong, you can complement both. And so surrounding yourself with people who complement you and amplify you is a useful tactic and a useful strategy for leaders, I think.
So if I had a group of leaders sitting in front of you right now, what piece of advice about communication would you give to them?
I think we learned a lot with COVID and the emerging challenges that we faced. It was an interesting time for all of our leaders. I didn't have as much direct involvement as some of our global operations team, but I learned early that clarity, making sure that you're clear and concise, and that you're establishing a cadence for regularly checking in the communication cycle, but more importantly, listening. I think overwhelmingly our team has done a great job of listening to the ground truth. And I take that from whether it's a personal experience, a family experience, in public service or in business. Part of the leader's role in communicating is being able to listen closely, not to understand just whether the people are hearing you and your team is aligned, but also understanding the ground truth, because no plan ever survives first contact with reality. And certainly as the COVID scenarios were opening up around the world, we had to pivot quickly. And so being able to communicate with our teams and have the right cadence for checking in and finding the ground truth allowed us to navigate that and course correct pretty effectively. So I would say listening at the core and making sure you're always being heard and understanding things is right at the center of that argument.
Can I clarify, are you saying ground truth and not ground troops, right? I've never heard that phrase before, ground truth. What a very powerful phrase.
It comes from the military too, like ground troops. A lot of generals talk about that in terms of, the plans. Once they're on the battlefield, the ground truth is persistent. I use it on my teams in business, because the closer you are to the consumer, the closer you are to the reality of that customer experience. And so we can theorize all we want about how a customer life cycle or a journey works, but until you have that real-time telemetry and that close contact or feedback from the customer, you don't really know their experience, their ground truth.
That's amazing. All right, Mark, what other business leaders, successful business leaders like yourself, should be on the podcast? Who else out there should we be paying attention to?
So I have a colleague, a new friend in the business. His name is John Lunitz, and he works in our financial services group. He's my peer in the Global Connect group. I think he would be a phenomenal host or guest. He's been a big part of our expansion into financial services. He's a terrific speaker. He became a great friend very quickly in the organization. And I look to him, as I said, I'm more of an introvert. He's my foil on the extrovert side. And I look to him for these kinds of conversations all the time. So I would love to get you in touch.
That would be great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, bring us home, Mark, with question number 6. Tell us about your favorite boss or teacher. Who's really influenced you?
I had a professor in grad school. His name is Donald Alt, and he was a professor of literature and philosophy, and he found the way to make some of the densest, toughest arguments and topics in those fields accessible to nearly everyone using popular culture. It was not unusual for us to be discussing some obscure French post-structuralist about in terms of a comic book or a panel of an animated film, and it taught me not to be afraid of big ideas and tough ideas, to just power through them, because they can always be broken down. And it also taught me to be sure I understood my audience, because being able to frame debate and frame topics in terms that everybody could understand was a good lesson to learn from him. So he was a big influencer in my intellectual development. I really appreciate all the work he did with us.
And what a lesson to carry forward to today, in a time when we dramatically need, right, and desperately need people who can, frame complex arguments in simple ways, and, be inviting with that messaging as well, to include other people to share their ideas.
Absolutely.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. If somebody wanted to reach out and introduce themselves, how might they do that?
They can reach me at Mark Wilkinson at ibex.co, or they can check out our website, ibex.co/utilities, anytime. Those are the easiest ways to find me.
That's awesome. Well, I sure do hope somebody reaches out to say hi, because you've been absolutely delightful on the show. And hopefully you'll come back and join us again soon for a future episode.
Thank you very much.
That's fantastic. Good. Well, this is Stacy McKibben with the Master Communicator Podcast. For more ideas and insights, please do go check us out at www.concilioteam.com. And we look forward to seeing you again next time. Take care.